information over here, so that way, you know, people don't have to hang around. Well, they might want to hang around, or we'll go home and watch it on TV, yeah, and whatever. Okay, so the approval of the agenda, please. Both late items.
We have a few late items. There is 2 letters regarding item 7.4, one that you've just received on the table in front of you, and one from Jillian Rushton that I circulated by email earlier today. And another item from CAO Lamont, just a recommendation for council's consideration, which you've also received by email.
Maybe it's
Yeah. Hi, Maureen.
10 minutes.
That's all.
Okay, somebody want to move to approve the agenda there with those items? Thank you, Joel. Second, David, and all in favor. Thank you. And this public comments. Now, I'm just gonna pass it over to the CAO here.
Yeah,
That's some
I just
comments
wanted
on
to
this.
provide, particularly the Blue Water and King Edward Bay residents that are here to talk about the water emergency that's currently facing Blue Water Park. Our Public Works Manager, Bob Robinson, resigned last week without notice. And in part, I think because of this issue. I first want to say I will miss Bob after 17 years, and he did this job to the best of his ability. And I thank him for all the hard work he did on behalf of Coanella municipality. I do understand the issue that's facing both communities, and I get it. I live out in Blue Water. I have our chief financial officer and myself met with a principal from Urban Systems today that specializes in water infrastructure assessment. The recommendation that I have for council is that council direct staff to waive the requirements of the purchasing policy and engage Urban Systems to provide overall management of the Blue Water and King Edward Bay water systems during the current water shortage emergency, and undertake a water management review of the Blue Water Park water system, and report back to council with a strategy and long-term sustainable plan. And that once Urban Systems have had an opportunity to report back to council, a community meeting be held to disseminate the information. What I have, the report that's on the agenda that I assume everybody read, is the information I have. I don't have any more information than that with the departure of Bob. What I do know is that the wells that have been dug are probably at least a couple months out from being functional. They have to go through the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority to be brought online. In the meantime, water will continue to be supplied from King Edward Bay to Blue Water. At that, I will leave this for now, and it will be a council discussion a little later in the agenda. What the mayor will be doing is we've moved this item up as he's indicated, so unless you want to sit through the entire meeting, we will deal with this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I just might add to that it is an unacceptable situation. There's no question about that. You know, we have an issue with water all over the island, and with our weather changes and the way things are going, it's not going to get any better. So we're going to have to hit all these things head on. Unfortunately, I think we just got caught in a bad situation here. And we're trying to make the best of a bad situation and trying to be fair to everybody, and I know a lot of people don't think it's fair. The worst case scenario, of course, is you turn on your tap in the morning, there's no water there. Then everybody's in trouble. So you've got to bear with us. Like Kathy said, it's going to be probably a couple of months before we get these other 2 wells on board, and we'll be monitoring them as we go along just to make sure that we don't run into that colossal no water situation. So, having said that, do you want to have these recommendations?
Well, I think we should probably go through public comment first.
Okay.
But in meeting with the Urban Systems principal, they're ready to start work tomorrow on this and make it a priority for the municipality to get moving as soon as possible.
All right, so back to public comments.
Brian Thomas Peter.
He's on that ferry.
Oh, is he okay?
Yeah. Next, David Hill regarding King Edward Bay Blue Water issues.
Sorry, I've been connecting.
No worries. Name and address when you get a chance. Thanks.
I'm on the speaker situation,
Okay,
because that's what I put down.
yeah,
I've sent a letter, which everybody's got.
got it, yeah.
Really, yeah, it really summarises what I wanted to say, but I will ask 5 questions.
Okay.
Why has the situation been allowed to become an emergency so early in the season? Who is responsible? What is being done, which I think you just said something about that. When will the situation improve? In other words, how soon do we live with this? I mean, how long do we live with this? And will there be better planning in the future? Thank you.
All good questions, thank you.
Melissa Harrison regarding Birch petition.
I wanted to bring you, a couple of friends and I wrote a petition about the birch lands. And I just wanted to bring it to you. I know the decision making to move forward with that, but I thought I should honour the signatories' effort in signing to bring it. And I still think it's useful. So, but first I wanted to say, I just want to make it really, really clear that I don't have anything to do with birch whatsoever. And neither do any of the other 2 people who worked on the petition with me. It's Dawn Grigor and Matthew Redicott. I think it's really important that you understand that we don't have anything to do with birch. So I'll just read out the petition question. We believe that birch is our best option to provide sustainable, secure rental housing appropriate to a range of income levels in the heart of the Cove. We ask that BIM honour the original commitment made to birch or improve it in order to build an attractive, accessible community asset on Lot 3. That land should be in one contiguous location to minimise the cost and work required to develop and manage the land. Optimal layout for the birch development should take priority when considering other potential uses of Lot 3. And we didn't put tons of work into getting signatures. We didn't stand on street corners. We mostly asked people that we know. And there's about 130 signatures. I think it's useful because it shows that, and I want to say without, I want to say that many of the people who signed this petition are actually, they're not people who are looking for rentals, they're property owners. And I think that demonstrates that a rental housing supply is an amenity for everybody. Everybody on the island, I think, or most people understand that sufficient rental housing supports our community. And it's not just a matter of who's going to wash our socks. It's about community members having somewhere to live. And I think, as I've said here before to some of you, the rental housing shortage impacts all levels of income, from professionals down to lower income. So I think it's useful in that respect. I also wanted to say a few words. I know that we want people who have a more pressing issue that they want to hear about, but I won't take long. So I'm glad that things are moving forward, and I know that, especially for birch, that there are grants that they're applying for that may evaporate in the next election. Who knows what's going to happen to housing grants. But I do notice that as you guys have been working through planning those lots, planning that land, that there was some efforts to make it more like a neighbourhood with a curving path through it, and now we're back to rule of straight lines. And I think that there's a reason for that. I also wanted to point to the fact that I noticed that the fire hall and, to an extent, the health centre have been planned. Somehow it's that in terms of the land that they take up, they are similar to what you would find in the outskirts of a rural centre, whereas the birch plan is for very high density, 24 to 28 units in an apartment block, which is more like downtown North Van. So there's a real kind of, for me, a mismatch between those two things, and I think that there will be consequences for that we will see as things develop. So I just wanted to make a couple of observations about, and I hope it's useful, about the process. You've chosen to use a standing committee to plan those lands. And this is the third council that's tried that approach. The Adelard Council used a standing committee, Murray's Council used a standing committee, and I think there's a limitation with that approach that we're seeing here. And that is that on that committee there are only 6 community members and 3 of those are elected. I printed out the goals, which are awesome, from the website. Ensure community benefits result from the planning, develop characteristics of specific areas, develop a market valuation process. That one in particular I think is great for a standing committee, but some of the other ones, the ones that I just mentioned, identify land that should be kept in a land bank, set priorities and a timeline, identifying target funds is again another good one for the committee. So what I'm trying to point to is that some of those objectives need a public consultation, and some of those objectives need a design team, I think. So I would like to encourage you to consider reorienting the steering committee, reorienting the standing committee into a steering committee to do that, to bring forward a public consultation and to work with the design team. The thing about this is you guys, and I hope you know how much I appreciate I know how much work you all put into this job, and the thanks you get for it, which is very little, mostly rudeness. But you're making 50-year decisions on those lots, and they're right. Some of them are right in the heart of the code. But there's no redos on these. Once they're planned, they're planned. I think it's really critical that we get it right, because they could be lands that we're going to appreciate for a long time, or they could be lands that create problems that we are going to struggle to deal with. So I think that the thing about having such a small group is that you can't, there's no possibility, no matter how smart or well-intentioned a group is, there's no way that you can take in all of the community complexities in order to make those planning decisions well. And additionally, I think community design, especially for kind of landlocked small communities, is an art that requires a lot of very specific experience of having seen these planning processes happen in small communities. Most of BC, a lot of the communities in BC are kind of, there's lots of land, it's flat, and they're kind of much easier to plan than where you've got lots of topography and trees and so on. So I think it needs a very specific set of skills, and I would just like to say, to emphasize that that group, I've watched them, they're intelligent, they're sensitive, they're very well intentioned, but that, to me, that probably isn't enough to do a good job. I wouldn't be happy with that to build my house, right?
Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, architects and
I'll
designers.
build your next house for you. I mean, I think I'm reasonably intelligent and very well intentioned. Nobody could criticize me for my intentions. But I don't think I could do something so complex. And I think this has far more complexities than building a house, because there's just so many, the complexity of the community, the complexity of the land. So I really want to encourage you to consider reorienting that committee as a steering group and getting a public engagement process underway and getting a design team. I think it's the most, you'll get the most success from that, and it will be the most durable way forward, because you'll have public buy-in. A public engagement process brings public buy-in with it and public information, so you don't get last-minute blow-ups and upsets. It means that all of the issues will be on the table, and everybody will have a good grasp of all of the main constraints. And the outcome of that, I think, is the most durable decisions and getting the best value from the land, both monetary and community value.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
That's all. Brian Hillspeter did email me asking to be put on the list, but seeing as he's not here.
Come here, Miss Terry.
Very thin,
Got action at the door there.
I take it the ferry has arrived.
Very happy. How are you guys?
Okay, is that person, is that
Brian,
person?
Brian.
In the parking lot? Because we're gonna move on if he's not here pretty soon.
Could be more people coming.
Yeah.
Here it is. No,
Okay.
that's Michael. We're waiting on somebody named Brian.
Have
who
you
had
seen
his
Brian,
name-
Michael?
British guy?
Why don't we just move on to the consent agenda, if everybody's okay with that, and then we'll come back if we can find things. Thank you. Okay, so the consent agenda, does anybody have anything that they're not ordinarily happy with?
Just
Maureen?
12.1 from the info items regarding
Okay.
the marina.
And yes, I think we can.
12.1?
12.1.
It's not part of your consent agenda.
Yeah.
It is, it's related to the info items one.
So
Oh,
if-
yeah,
if
okay.
we would move it to correspondence. And you can put it down here.
Under number 8.
Under correspondence, yeah.
Or items from the consent.
All the above. Okay, anybody else?
I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second, Michael, for a second, all in favor? All right, so Brian hasn't showed up. Well, we just, I guess we can just carry on.
Yeah.
So we have a delegation, but we're also waiting on them from the ferry.
Do you want to go ahead on to the next one?
So have we done 7.4, or are we gonna wait for Ryan?
Do you know, the thing is, we don't even wait for council members usually.
Yeah.
Well, no, I thought we had moved 7.4 up, but we're, and so we haven't dealt with the recommendations on 7.
Correct, so yes, probably be good to deal with
I
it.
think that's it, yes.
So, is it consensus there?
Yeah.
Going to deal with this 7.4?
Yeah.
Sure. I wonder if this person is here. Julian? Julian?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Let you go. Number 2 delegation.
Number 2 delegation.
Yeah.
How are you
Thanks,
today,
Julian.
everyone? We've met in the past, but here I come for something different this time. It's the Highland Trail community. And basically, we are up in Eagle Cliff Drive, Eagle Cliff, and it's one of the oldest neighborhoods, so you know, and there's 13 homes out there. It's a development that existed probably 30 years ago, but with the original road being 50 years, and actually the first house is like 85 years old. It's one of the original cabins of Bowen Island. And it is a little public, steep road. We would like to share and address some of the issues we have in Highland Trail, and we would like to ask the municipality help in partnering with us, the community, in trying to solve the issues around fixing the road. There's 3 main issues with the road. One is that there's a paved section that needs to be replaced and is falling apart due to maintenance, and we recognize that it's a very steep road, and we've always been accountable for maintaining it because of the steepness of the road. However, in the process that we've investigating how to fix roads, there's drainage issues, right? And drainage issues cost way more. Water, development, construction, development that it's above us that was done, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago and went bankrupt and the bank took over it and all sorts of issues that's been out of our control in the world, but we're trying to fix this, right? And the third issue is the lane that requires some maintenance. It's been unmaintained. It's a pedestrian lane that exists in the middle of Highland Trail. This is kind of a little bit of the issues that we've want to show in the presentation. This is actually a survey that was done on the lot showing where the easements and where the properties are. But what we want to do is rehabilitate the road. It was a 3-stage process, right? We started with the top part, which was the one that was totally unpaved. We went to the middle part, but in order to do the middle and the bottom part, we need to fix the drainage issues. Because if we pour concrete, it will last very short because the water below it will just pop it out.
Yeah.
And we need to deal with it properly. In addition, right now, because of all the water changes, the water is draining down the mountain and it's literally impacting 2 houses. One of them, which is a small cabin, has been fixed and stuff, but literally the water is going totally under this post house. And then the other house, it has a big foundation, but in big rain waters, the water just goes through, right? And so we've been analyzing the issue and trying to see what solutions we have, right? And basically, we are planning on paving the road, putting concrete on the road like we did in the top part, which is the main expense, and doing some ditching. But we need to deal with a portion of the road that's eroding, and it's on municipal land, right? It's part of the public road easement, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we initially went and talked to Bob when he used to work in Public Works. He went and looked at the issue, and that's what we said that the right process is for you guys go and present to council, invite 1 or 2 of the councilors to see the issue, and hopefully we can work together toward fixing the issue, right? The drainage, we believe it's a small, relatively straightforward issue to do if we built a retaining wall to catch the water, to stop the erosion, and then build a water catchment, right?
Yep.
It wouldn't be a major retaining wall. It would be the standard 5 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, because the total height in there is no more than 7 feet, right? So it's not, don't imagine a major public works endeavor, right? So again, that's kind of what we have in mind, and then helping us with the rehabilitation, but that's probably the last of our worries right now. The drainage and being able to fix the road is the main issue, right? For those of you we've had accidents in the past, we had a car flip over and land in the main road. I slipped down the car once, right, and I totaled my pickup, right? It's quite dangerous, and that's why we want to fix this once and for all, right? We've been kind of working for this over 3 years, assessing and looking at options, but we've come into this issue around water and drainage, and that's kind of where we really want to invite some of you or all of you to visit and help us with how do we solve this issue. So I don't know if you have questions or.
Yeah, we'd love to help you solve it because it's a horror show up there.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I know somebody that used to live up there and it's treacherous at the best of times. How much of that's public road?
Sorry?
How much of that is public road?
The whole road is public.
It is, eh?
The whole road is public. Again, this is one of the old developments
Yeah.
when this was Islands Trust, so it was done with another view. Like I said, the road initially, there's Lanny, who's one of the neighbors, old timer, and he said that he drove up that road in the 1970s.
Yeah.
There used to be a water tank up there, right? So,
That's right.
but it's one of those old developments of the island that just happened and evolved through time. Last year we have the last lot without a house got built. There were 2 houses that were built last year, and now it's fully. So we don't expect new development or new construction up there. And that's one of the reasons that we're waiting to complete the concrete of the road for all the houses to be built and not have big trucks go over it. Right.
Who hasn't been up there in council? I haven't. It's quite an adventure.
I haven't been there for.
I have actually recently, and I have to say it's an accident looking for a place to have
Yeah.
as it stands right now.
Anyway, Julian, if you can just leave it with us, I think we'd like to get a council visit there and see exactly, because it's extraordinary up there.
Perfect,
And we'll take it from there.
that's all I want, thank you so much.
I do have to be clear though, effectively I'm running the Public Works Department right now.
Okay, yeah.
And we are hiring an interim director of engineering.
Okay.
Council will have to prioritize a very long list for that person.
yeah.
So I just need you to be patient for a little bit.
Totally, and I understand that that's why we want to put into this, and we've done analysis and work to try to accelerate, because
You looking for a job?
no, I have another one. But the whole truth is that right now, with the November rains of last year, we're really scared that there's, like, the road is starting to erode in a portion. And if we lose that road, there's probably 8 houses who lose access. That's how worried we are right now. It's becoming more and more of a year. Right, so, can I have 30 minutes of a promo for another topic?
30 minutes?
30 seconds? 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Yeah, this week I'm proud to say that we're going to launch the BTS membership, Oil Line Transportation Society. I know Michael and I had a little conversation, and so probably through David you're going to get a little invite later on the week, so please support us.
Awesome. Certainly will.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you.
We will arrange a site visit in the meantime. Staff
Great.
will work.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's my house. Thank you. All right. So we find Peter?
Brian?
Oh, Brian, yeah.
Brian Thomas.
Brian Thompson.
I've got so many of them.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. I speak to you as the chair of the King Edward Bay LAC. And I know there's been a lot of correspondence about that recently, and there's been a long history, a contentious history between the three parties of the municipality, Bluewater and King Edward Bay, all of which is regrettable in my view, and I hope that we can find a way forward. The first thing I'd like to say, though, is that the proposition that has been put to us several times in King Edward Bay is that somehow we are contesting the responsibilities and the ownership of the municipal water plant and managing the water systems in King Edward Bay. That's never been the case. It would undermine our own arguments to do so. So I'm very clear, we are very clear, we've always been very clear that the ownership and responsibilities for managing are with the municipality. And in respect of that concern, that responsibilities, goes the assumption that it is not above questioning, that it's not unreasonable to look for equity and to look for a propriety in its management. So all that aside, I would like to just say that there's a real potential here, despite all of the arguments that have gone back and forth and the discontents that have been expressed and the years of trying to get to the bottom of these things. This crisis has been singularly the most helpful thing we've had, in the sense that it creates an opportunity to come together and to resolve the problem once and for all. There's a singular outcome that will change everything between us, and that is the resolution of the system in Bluewater being subject to a proper appraisal and capital expenditure. That will resolve everything. And having said that, I don't think we need something more than everything to resolve this problem, because tensions exist, which I would like to get rid of, we would like to dispense with, we would like to overcome. And there's the kernel of that between King Edward Bay and Bluewater. I've learned a great deal, I think they probably will learn a great deal too, about the nature of this, about the nature of the problems and the assumptions that both sides have been working with. We have had different information that we've worked to, we've had different assumptions that have been generated, and to be absolutely honest with you, and also Bluewater, I think we have not, I don't think any party in this has operated in a way that, I'm trying to say this delicately, has not been subject to our own prejudices, let me put it like that. And that's been unhelpful, and it's gone on for years. To resolve the problem, subsequently, what I proposed in my most recent letter, which I hope you've all had a chance to see, is that we look towards developing a strategy, a comprehensive strategy for the West Side water. And that should include both LACs partnering with the municipality in agreeing the strategy and the operational procedures. And I think we all want to see that, but it is completely reliant on the leadership of the municipality stepping up. And I think that the problems of misinformation, the problems of assumptions that have been generated and perhaps nurtured in their private way on each side of this, have not been helped by how the municipality has proceeded. And we would be grateful if the municipality in subsequent dealings with us could operate with the intention of providing fairness, of course, clarity, of course, but most of all, sort of management integrity. So we all know that we're receiving the same information and that the assumptions don't get a chance to grow in opposition to each other. But my suspicion is that they don't need to. And we could overcome this. So it's a simple message I have. This is a crisis. Let's use the crisis as an opportunity, and that opportunity is utterly reliant on the quality of leadership and management offered by a municipality. And we just have to be honest that in the past, we've not done that very well. I don't think King Edward Bay has, I don't think Bluewater has, and I don't think the municipality has. But it is only the municipality who has the role of leadership. And I beseech you then, to just be absolutely clear in your minds how we're going to go forward. Let's have a strategy for how we're going to proceed in this, and you'll get the complete support from King Edward Bay, and I'm sure from what I know of Bluewater now, even 3 months ago I would have suggested otherwise, but now I'm absolutely sure that Bluewater are on side to do precisely the same thing. If there are questions, I'm glad to answer them, but I think that's probably enough for me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. And to your points, unfortunately, you're a little bit late, and there was a little bit of a preamble that went on here. Just as sort of to your points, actually, and I'll tell you, the CAO just has met with Urban Systems, and there's a resolution going to council that will provide overall management of Bluewater and King Edward Bay systems during the current water shortage emergency, and undertake a water management review of the Bluewater Park water system, and report back to council with a strategy and long-term sustainable plan. We have to change the way we do business, and this is the first step.
Well, that's excellent. I would hope if I could just tag on to the end of that, a consideration for the immediate concerns that King Edward Bay have for its plant. The preservation of its current wells and pumps.
Yeah, something has to happen.
Indeed.
It's not going to get any better. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I think it will get better. And I think we're going
Water
to...
shortage?
No, the overall situation. You just said it wasn't going to get better.
The situation's going to get better, but
yeah.
we're not going to get a lot more water.
Well, I'm speaking to the situation, and I think it will get better. I think we've got a resolution in front of us here that we can look to, and
Absolutely.
so let's move on to 7.4.
Sure.
I just want to be more optimistic about this. I think there are solutions, and we've got
My point
ways
was,
to come together.
I'm just saying that we're not going to get the amount of rainfall we've had.
Oh, rainfall.
Yeah, rainfall.
Okay. All right.
Past,
Thank you.
we'll have to deal with it in other ways.
I was
Yes.
mixed up.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, sorry, I probably wasn't clear. Okay, so,
Gary, we're going to
Sorry,
go
go ahead.
7.4 or?
yeah, we're going to go on to 7.4. Yeah.
So I'll speak to that, or if you want
Okay.
to start.
So, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate that. Well said.
I'll actually start. We have a report from our Public Works Manager that outlines the history of what got us here today. I cannot speak any more to that situation than what he outlines in the report. By this recommendation to hire Urban Systems, and we're planning to engage Urban Systems not only for this strategy for Bluewater Park and King Edward Bay, but also they will be providing interim director of engineering services while we restructure and hire a permanent person. The principal of Urban Systems who's involved specializes in watershed hydrology, infrastructure failure assessments, flood investigations, floodplain management, drainage infrastructure renewal, mitigation strategies, infrastructure master planning, design and construction. So we couldn't find a better person this quickly. He's boots on the ground as of today. As soon as we have this council resolution this evening, he will proceed first with looking at the situation of the wells that have been dug, when we can get those up and running, and also provide us with his expertise in how we move forward with this. And so the recommendation that I have mentioned earlier that I'm requesting of council, it's a bit open-ended for a council resolution as we don't have funding allocated to it yet, but I would urge council, because of this emergency, to adopt this or a similar resolution. That council directs staff to waive the requirements of the purchasing policy and engage Urban Systems to provide overall management of the Blue Water and King Edward Bay water systems during the current water shortage emergency, and undertake a water management review of the Blue Water Park water system. Report back to council with a strategy and long-term sustainable plan. That once Urban Systems have had an opportunity to report back to council, that a community meeting be held to disseminate this information. At this point, if we hold a community meeting, we're not going to have anything to say. I've reviewed reports, I've reviewed minutes, and I have no more information than what's in that report. Once Urban Systems, as I've indicated, report back, and we're asking them to do that as soon as possible, we will hold community meetings in both water systems.
All right, I'll move that.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll second. Any further discussion on this at this time, David?
Sure. So most of you know I live in King Edward Bay, and when this happened at the end of the last month, I was absolutely shocked to be in stage 4 already, and wondering what we're going to do about it, and discussing with neighbors and so on. But I was extremely pleased today to read all the letters that were in this report, including really good stuff from Blue Water, as well as really good stuff from King Edward Bay. So that got me to work, and I wrote a couple of resolutions to replace the one that we have here in 7.4, and I was about to send them when I read Kathy's email, and she actually wrote my 2 resolutions for me. And so I heartily support what we're doing. I think we need to really understand the system. We obviously need to, I was hoping that we could actually have an immediate meeting and explain the situation to everybody, but I see why we can't do that, because we're all somewhat up in the air, and we need to have proper analysis first. So having said that, then I just support where we are, and very pleased that you found someone who could do this work right away. It's really important.
Okay, Maureen first, then.
I hope everyone has had an opportunity to read Bob's report,
Yeah.
because it does provide useful background, at least for me it did. I did have a suggestion. I'm not sure whether Vancouver Coastal Health has been informed of this situation.
Yes, they have.
So they are aware.
They're aware and poised and ready to go.
Excellent, thank you.
So,
2 quick things, well, 3. One, I'm in support of the motion, and I'll be voting in favor unless I hear something very surprising. I think that's great that you're able to move so quickly. And the second thing is that I heard on the radio on the way here that this has been one of the driest springs in forever, and I think we're facing climate change impacts that we'll need to take into consideration going forward. And I'm, although it may be something else. I noticed that in the report, we can't say particularly what it's due to, but I will note that logging is on the horizon for uplands in Bowen Island, and I just want to raise the issue of watershed protection again. As another, and let's not lose the opportunity of using this crisis to make our point to the province and to BC Timber Sales that we need our watersheds. The third thing is there's a meeting of the Emergency Program Committee tomorrow morning, and so if it's not already on the agenda, I'll put this water shortage or drought emergency plans onto the agenda for us to start thinking about once again.
I think so. Anybody else? Allison?
I noticed in several of the comments that there was concern about not having been contacted or receiving the information. So I would just like to reiterate that we can't search for or use your email address. There is a provision to sign up to get on the notice, the email addresses list for Blue Water Park in King Edward Bay, and in which case if there is an issue, you would get a notification. So please encourage yourselves and please encourage your neighbors to sign up. And I was just looking, there is a spot on the website where you can do that. And if you've got trouble, then call me and they'll tell you how to do it.
Thank you, Allison. If I may add to that, I met with our communications coordinator today to keep the two communities up to speed on what's going on. So as we have information, we'll be disseminating it to both communities. It's a priority.
But we can only do that if we have your email.
Can the public speak on this?
We had the public comments
Yeah,
already.
public comments. Sorry.
Quite a lot.
Yeah, we could move to a committee of the whole, if you want. If you've got some comments.
Oh, well, yeah,
I move that we move to a committee of the whole.
Good, second? All in favor?
okay. Mel Hoskin from Blue Water. We see the position you're in. You're obviously taking steps to take care of that. But as Allison just said, you mentioned if there was any greater frustration that we've had over the last little while is lack of communication. I am on that email list, but I can't go out and talk to everyone in the neighborhood about that. The average person in Blue Water, I bet 50% of the people right now don't even know that they're on restrictions. I don't have any proof of that, but that's my suspicion. So then, I know you can't have a general public meeting yet, but there has to be some other way of communicating to all the residents of Blue Water and of the other district. Undercurrent, mail-outs, posters. You've got to get through to those people that do not pay any attention to council meetings, would never go on site, would never sign up for web notices. So just to encourage you to do anything you can on a day-by-day basis or week-by-week basis. That's what I have to say.
Well,
I agree with
Thank you
that.
for letting me in there.
100% no. It's in an emergency like this, if you can't communicate, then it's almost worthless.
I would say that we have done mail-out notices to the residents. I think they were included with the tax notices as well, but it obviously hasn't been enough, and that's what we're strategizing to get more information out there.
Maureen?
The emergency notification system, I believe, has the ability to target alerts.
Yeah, as long as you're registered for it.
As long as you're registered, but that would get attention
Yes.
for those who are
That's a really
registered.
good point.
Gentlemen?
Rob Duffy, Windjammer Road, Blue Water. In years past, by June 1st, the meter reading signage would be posted at the entrance into Blue Water Park. That still has not been posted yet this year. And that would have been another avenue for posting the stage 4 water restrictions as people are driving in and out of the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point.
We have a community board there that we've been asked not to use because of the
I asked
beautiful.
that.
It was like.
It's all your
So-
fault.
We don't want to offend
It's all your
them,
Yeah, it's a beautiful, yeah.
but it could be posted on the
Yeah.
side of it.
I
It's
agree.
posted on the side of the mailboxes
Yeah.
in King Edward Bay, so there are
Yeah.
opportunities to strategically post them.
We will, yes.
Yeah. Quickly, no?
That sign always used to be 35, 40 years down at the intersection, and that was where that kind of information was posted. The artwork on there is lovely now, but that's incidental. The sign was moved up just when King Edward Bay was being developed,
Okay.
not I believe by the municipality, but by King Edward Bay, because, I believe because they didn't want to see potential buyers seeing that there was water restrictions. You can research that if you like. However, a new sign down at the crossroads, so they only need one sign, not having to have it on 3 different roads all over the place. But key information like that would be a good idea.
We'll work on that right away. Thank you very much.
We have a great communications coordinator, and we have her tasked down, and I love the idea of using our emergency system to also get the information out.
Okay, very quickly in the back there, and then we got to roll.
My name's Robert.
Okay.
I'm a Blue Water resident as well, but Just occurred to me that you have somebody from Urban Systems coming in that seems like they're really qualified and have a lot of expertise. I was thinking maybe it doesn't address the current water shortage, but like sort of creating resilience in existing houses that maybe don't have the best infrastructure for, conserving water or storing water, like cisterns. Maybe as part of the report, maybe we could benefit from some of their expertise that do what we could do to the existing houses and maybe even future construction to create houses that are really water resilient and conserve water on that end of the problem, not just the construction.
I agree. The principal that we're hiring from Urban Systems sits on the Engineering Society of BC's Climate Action Committee. So I think harnessing that expertise as well, it's, and he's moving to Bowen. So we're harnessing that information and see where we can change the way we're looking at things moving forward, including with climate change, how we can work better with our existing infrastructure. Absolutely.
I think it's really important as we move forward through this, and there's gonna be a couple of lean months. I don't know what the weather's forecast to be, but it's not great as far as water is concerned. That, talk to your neighbors and make sure that if somebody's got their hose out there on, you gotta talk to them and say, hey, this isn't, we're super critical here, and it's, it's not gonna be pleasant if we run out of water. So anyway, it's a communal effort to look after your water, there's no question about it.
So just one other communication thing, on the municipal website, there's a caption at the top that says alerts. And if you hit on that, there is an article, a section there on blue water, so people know if they're concerned about something, go look at the alerts page to see if there's a notice.
But we do have to get the information out in other ways. My
Definitely
parents live
improve
with
that.
water and, they're not always accessing the website. So we have the one recommendation on the table. Once we have that, I would suggest even just to reinforce that this be made a priority for our communications coordinator, coming up with creative ways to disseminate the information as it comes in.
Yeah. So are you looking for an additional?
We can do that one separately once we've adopted this.
So I move we move out of committee to whole.
Okay, second? Yes. All in favor? Okay, we're back in the regular council meeting, and we've got that recommendation on the table.
Has it been seconded?
Yes. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much.
What are we doing with the recommendation under second?
I'm just gonna.
I would hold off on that for now. I need to hear more from Urban Systems. I just can't definitively say. I think we have to maintain stage 4 for blue water at this stage. I'm unsure about King Edward Bay, and I will talk some more with Urban Systems about that.
So can we say 7.4 is postponed until a future meeting? We just dealt with it under a different recommendation.
Well, yeah, do we have to actually officially?
No.
Okay.
It's just a recommendation. All right, so we're gonna go back to, so that's it for.
So one further recommendation, the communication coordinator be directed to prioritize dissemination of information on an ongoing basis to Blue Water and King Edward Bay.
I'll move that.
Second.
Okay. No further discussion, all in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Okay, get that straightened, Maureen.
Just a point that there is a section of the municipal website that deals with water conservation at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
Mel,
calm down.
just listen to what Maureen's saying here. There is a section on the
On the
website.
municipal website, so Sophie has something to build on.
Yeah.
That deals with conservation.
Water conservation. And so there's a page on the website that lays out the water conservation stages and things like that, so we'll be building on that. Yeah.
Now, before we move on, that's about all for you guys, or anybody that was here for the blue water, unless you want to stay and play, it's a.
No, thank you for your.
Understand that, we'll give you a second. Thanks, Mel.
I think they might want to stay and meet during your RCMP off.
Well, that's it.
yeah.
That could be run away.
Welcome to Bowen. Yeah. Welcome to Bowen Green Water.
Yeah.
Enjoy this.
Yes, I thought.
Borrow another chair if you want, yes.
Sure, just bring it up.
Bring up another one if you
Come on
want.
in.
Yes.
Welcome to the delegation to the RCMP Detention Supervisor, Gareth Bradley. Good to
Thank
see
you.
you again.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Introduction, the incoming Corporal Adam
Katie.
Kaylee. Kaylee, okay.
How do you spell that, sir?
Incoming Corporal Lalo, or
It's
you.
on, it's on.
Cheers. Go ahead, it's all yours, Gareth.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, thank you for slating us in here. We emptied the room apparently. Since we last spoke, I just wanted to quickly say that I've taken over the supervisor spot. I was in an acting role before, so I think I met most of you.
Yeah, for sure.
So I am officially the staff sergeant of the Squamish detachment, so I'll be supervising.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. That being said, I'd like to acknowledge Paulo and his community service to Bowen Island. Everybody. It never ceases to amaze me every time I come over here, especially in the last 8 months. Everybody I run to is like, we're going to miss him dearly. You were an integral part to the community for the last 4 years, and I just want to appreciate your service to the community.
It's been an honor.
Just wanted to recognize Paulo for his contribution to Bowen Island. But,
We'll miss you.
Yeah,
sure will.
That being said, you, sir, have big boots to fill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is Adam Cayley. He's been in Squamish for 4 years. Really in North Van before that, but I'll let you introduce yourself and go from there.
Yeah, so I was in North Vancouver for almost 10 years before I went to Squamish. Bounced around a little bit there, doing different jobs, and enjoyed that. Squamish has been really interesting. It's been nice to get out of a bigger city and into a smaller community, and now I'm looking forward to getting into a smaller community still.
Island community.
Island.
Yeah.
I'll hopefully have to pick up tips and tricks from Paulo in the coming weeks and hit the ground running in July.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Look forward, when is the transition?
July, yeah. Mid-July.
Good, well, I'm glad you're sticking around for a while.
I'm out the first week of July, like 4, 5, 6, the movers come, and then he'll take over about.
Yeah, there's a bit of work to be done on the house, so it just depends on
Okay.
how much work that ends up being, a week, a couple days. I don't know.
Did
So.
you trash it?
Don't make it too nice. You guys will get jealous, guys and girls.
Well, that transition will dovetail well. Our new fire chief starts mid-July as well. And he's joining us from the city of North Vancouver. District. Get that on.
No, city of North Van. City of North Van.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, excellent.
That's probably work good one.
Yeah, sure.
Derek Dixon.
Derek Dixon.
He's a training officer there.
Yes. Good. That's basically why we slated in, just to do a little introduction and say thanks to Paulo and.
Well, thank you very much for that. Paulo, I don't know what to say. It feels like you've been a fixture here for 10 years. On behalf of the council, I'm sure, the municipality, and the community in general, we'd like to thank you for looking after us, and you and your colleagues for the last 4 years. You've done a hell of a job. And you know, it's been an exemplary example of community policing, because not only your dedication to the job and your duty, you're also dedicated to the community, and you've done a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have made it very easy, so I appreciate it. It means a lot to hear you say that stuff.
Yeah, and we hate to lose you, but wherever you end up, I don't know where you're going to end up, but they're going to be very lucky to get you to, and they're going to know that. So all the best to you and your family and your future.
We'll be back to visit.
Good.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely do that.
And welcome, Adam.
Yeah, welcome, Adam. Good.
Our communications coordinator really would like to get a picture with the mayor and the group.
Okay.
So do you mind if we just take a quick break to do that?
Okay.
Just a little goodie. Just so you can remember some buttons and stuff so you can work around. Yay!
Go off, you guys.
Okay.
Old and new.
And how about in front of the Canadian flag?
Canadian flag?
Okay, sure.
Got some better flags for
Oh,
that.
sorry, Norman.
Oh, it's church.
How would you like it?
You can come sit up here.
Yeah, all right, awesome.
Say cheese.
Gee.
Perfect, thank you.
Hang on, here's
Oh,
the
sorry,
service.
sorry. Thanks.
Thank you.
Pleasure, all of you. Look forward to working with you. Okay, great.
Yeah. We'll see you again, don't you worry. Pleasure. Yeah, thanks a lot. Good to see you here.
Before we leave, does anybody have any
Yeah.
questions? No? Everything's good? I think we last spoke, Sue, you're looking for 5-year trends?
Yes,
Yep. You were,
Yep.
we'll see that. We have the 5-year trends now. And
oh, good, I'd be interested, so if you could just send them to mayor and council
Yep.
at bowenmunicipality.ca, that would be great. We'll
Sure.
get them on the
Yeah,
agenda,
we'll do that in our report.
and it'd be
Yeah,
super.
excellent.
Yeah, okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet you.
On a personal note, Paulo, thanks for being so gentle with me. Over the years.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. See you later, bye.
Oh, I think this is kind of for a party.
Okay, so I believe we're at 5.1, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think
that's right.
Yep.
Ron, you love it.
Yeah.
So, business arising from minutes. Raj, over to you.
Okay. Oh, hold on, let me log back on here. Just want to make sure I'm talking about the right thing here. Oh, okay. So we had this report at the last council meeting. This is business arising from. Staff met with Tourism Bowen Island after the last meeting, and we're recommending an increase of $5,000 for the 2019 budget for the fee for service. The Tourism Bowen Island had expressed an interest that in the next, they'd like to see a more secure source of funding for their operation, so they may be applying for a 5-year in July. And so staff recommendation is to increase their operating budget by $5,000 so they can continue providing the services that they provide under the current agreement for service.
Certainly. All right, Michael, go ahead.
I'll be happy to.
Okay. Does anybody have a seconder? Got it on the table. Thank you, David, for the discussion.
Thank you. I have a question, and that is how much of the additional funding request is due to the rise in the minimum wage? Did you have a
We haven't quantified how much. I mean, they've basically not.
I know it goes up from $10 something to $13 and something.
Yeah, they're going from $10.85 to $13.85, but we didn't go into a specific analysis of how much was due to the rise in the specific.
Okay.
They did indicate that this funding would be to maintain current service levels.
Yeah.
So it's not to do anything additional to what's outlined in the loop.
Okay, thank you. No, I did read that too. And then thank you, Raj, for pointing me to 12.11, which is the report that they talked about when they came in May, which I had missed my first time through. So that describes more what they're doing and what they're planning to do. So that's great. Yeah. I was surprised to see the 47% increase in visitors served. Not that that's overall visitation, but that's a big amount.
Anybody else? Maureen?
Yeah, just a question about the source of the additional 5,000. The report says it's proposed to be funded from non-taxation revenue in excess of the budget. What does that mean?
Well, as the year goes on, we'll have sources of revenue that will come in that were not anticipated. So as an example, building permit revenues may exceed what we had budgeted. So what we're proposing is, since tax revenue has already been spoken for, it may be in excess of revenue or some other non-taxation revenue that will exceed what we have, that will be applied to fund the 5,000 in 2019.
Okay, so the business permit revenue cannot be used for this purpose, but perhaps there's other sources.
Well, yeah, and I haven't identified a specific source, I was just giving an example of non-taxation revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll ask the question, all in favor? Thank you, unanimous. And then the 5.2, well, let's just back up again.
So 5.2 is our, essentially, this is a report following the Council of the Whole meeting last week. And this is basically bringing forward the budget for those strategic initiative priorities and commitments that are on the 2019 work plan. And if you, I'm just going to turn your attention to the very last page here, which is Appendix B. It has a table that best summarizes the required budget. So just looking at the very bottom of the budget amount, 2019 work initiatives require a budget of $106,300. There was a $48,200 budget that was carried forward from 2018 for strategic initiatives. So new initiatives requiring funding in 2019, which there isn't a budget for, total $58,100. Of that $58,100, 40,000 was identified as potentially coming from grants that may be available, which means that we need $18,100 in municipal funding, and I am recommending that that be funded from our accumulated surplus to meet our strategic initiatives priorities and commitments for 2019.
All right, thanks, Roy. Questions? Allison?
In unappropriated surplus, there's a whole bunch of quasi-appropriations where we've been saving, designating surplus, not putting them into reserves for special projects. So how much does that list total right now?
That total is, I don't have that number in front of me, Allison, but it, the unappropriated surplus that is available to temporarily fund, to temporarily fund operations until taxation revenue comes in is I believe, it's relatively high. I can get back to you with the exact number, but it's in the hundreds, if not million, over $1 million.
Well, no, unappropriated surplus is available for working capital. I'm not disputing that, but in that unappropriated surplus, we've been putting away a little bit every year towards the community center, towards the fire hall facilities fund, stud co-development. So I was just curious as to what that total was.
What that
so
total
of
is?
the $2 million, how much have we really got to use for?
I was looking at that listing at my desk earlier today, and I've got a listing of all of the reserves that do make up that portion of the unappropriated surplus, and I can share that with you. I don't have that at my fingertips right now. I can share that with all the council, yes.
Because it's 51,000 will deplete the unallocated, so it's back to the 50. It's not temporary, I mean, it's going to take it away.
Okay. I'd be happy to share that with council.
Thank you. Maureen?
Yeah, I'm not altogether sure if I understand what's here. And it's in the funding source required. The advanced housing initiatives, the 15,000 that can potentially come from other sources, that's the 15,000 that the province is potentially providing for the housing needs assessment. And there's an expectation of the municipality putting in 8.1. Am I correct there?
That is correct.
And then with the second item, the composting feasibility, we do have $10,000 that already came in grants. So are we saying that the municipality is going to match that?
That's correct.
And with the development of the Heritage Strategic Plan, what's the source of the $15,000?
accumulated surplus?
My understanding with that 15,000 was that there was, from the minutes of the Council of the Whole, I believe you had identified there was potential grant funding available for that. That's what the notes said. And that's why I've got that there.
So that isn't a typo.
Well, other would be grant, yeah, I shouldn't have accumulated surplus there as a fund.
I thought it was in the wrong column.
Yeah. No, it was identified as, I mean, essentially, we wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have a grant of 15,000, then we would have to then we would have to come back to council to ask for $15,000. But my understanding was that there may be grant funding available for that.
My understanding is that there isn't.
There isn't? Okay, in that case.
And the request that's later in the council agenda is specifically for $7,000 to provide support for the Heritage Strategic Plan.
So 7,000 instead of 15,000?
Yeah, because the 7,000 would be related to the cost of consultation and public engagement, and the remainder of the amount would be the allocation of staff time.
Okay, so that means, we would need 25,100 from accumulated surplus instead of 18,100. We would have to change our.
So we cross out 15 in the other column,
Yeah.
and both columns, and write in 7, and put 7 under municipal funding.
And that would enable us to move forward with that.
So the number in the,
50,100 would be the funding required.
58,000.
Instead of 58,100, we would need 50,100 then, right? Because we only need 7,000 for.
But you didn't have the 15 in that column. Oh, I'm looking at the other column.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll have to revise that.
So I guess if this were to pass, I mean, my bottom line question is, would we be able to proceed with the composting project? And I'm assuming yes.
I'm assuming yes as
Yeah.
well. I've talked to quite a few people about 20,000 and they seem to feel
Yeah.
it's feasible.
And would we be able, with the adjustment to the heritage element, we would be able to proceed with that as well?
Yes.
with the 7,000 you mean?
With the 7,000.
Thank you.
So the bases are covered then it was out?
Yeah,
So
that's
in,
great.
exactly, and in the recommendation at the front, we need to change the numbers as follows then. That council approve an additional budget provision of 50,100 for council strategic initiatives, with 25,100 to be funded from accumulated surplus and 25,000 to be funded from external grant funding.
Have we moved this yet?
No.
Have we moved that then?
Do you want to, I guess
As amended.
there's one member of the public who might wonder what we're talking about and may be depressed. Okay.
We don't need to say amended if we move the recommendation, because we haven't changed it.
That's right.
But I think we should
We
probably
moved
get
the change.
Hope to read it out, just so there's
Just the
clarity.
second paragraph, Raj, that council directs staff to incorporate consideration of the additional item of 25,000, that's 25,100 now.
Now, the second
Yeah.
wouldn't change.
Okay. So that council approve an additional budget provision of 50,100 for council strategic initiatives, with 25,100 to be funded from accumulated surplus and 25,000 to be funded from external grant funding. The council directs staff to incorporate consideration of the additional item of 25,000 funding for the Bona Resilient Community Housing to the 2020 budget process, and the council directs staff to incorporate an annual budget provision to fund council strategic initiatives in the 2020 budget process.
Can we move?
Yes.
Thank you. Second? David, and any further discussion, Maureen?
Yeah, I'm concerned about delaying some sort of funding for Birch. They are on a short leash in terms of making applications to a variety of funding agencies, and while they have received 15,000 channeled through the municipality from the foundation, we did not provide that funding. If we are able to increase the tourism budget using non-taxation revenue in excess of the budget, if we have an accumulated surplus, that could allow for funding Birch, I would like to see that happen this year.
Maybe what we should do is pull paragraph 2 out of the resolution and deal with paragraphs 1 and 3 and then have a separate discussion on paragraph 2.
I'd support that.
Yeah. Is okay.
We just,
Sever
we could
it
just
into
sever.
two
Sever.
Okay.
Okay, we'll sever that middle.
Call the question on 1 and 3.
Yeah. All right, is there any further discussion? I'll ask a question, all in favor?
That's for 1 and 3.
Oh, that's for 1 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So those are done. And back to 2 now, council direct staff to incorporate consideration of the additional $25,000 funding for the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing in the 2020 budget process. Go ahead.
I think if we say in the current year, what would the wording be that would put it into this year?
Well, then we've got to get another report from staff on how to fund the 25,000 in the current year.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see a budget from the Birch, which I'm not sure that we've seen.
I believe that was included in the community grants application, because if you recall, this was the amount that they applied for.
It was, when we took it out of there.
Yeah.
But they funded it out, correct?
We just take it out.
Is there any harm in deferring that and asking for a staff report along with the community, their budget to
I
the
think-
next meeting? Because we haven't looked at that in light of this.
Yeah, we don't have the info in front of us at the moment.
I was just gonna say my staff report here gives a full, like under the advanced housing initiatives, gives a full
Yeah, there's a nice-
picture
yeah.
of basically what our, what the situation is here and what our funding capability is. We don't have the funding in 2019 from my perspective. I kind of, on the, just to speak to Councillor Nicholson's request, and 5,000 was a nominal amount. I don't feel any risk in including a small amount from another source of revenue, but all these amounts add up over time, and we may not have that revenue at the end of the year. So at this time of the year, I could not identify another funding source to provide this funding.
Accumulated surplus?
Accumulated surplus is meant for one-time funding type items. This appears to be an ongoing request for funding. So I wouldn't recommend as your chief financial officer to fund it from accumulated surplus.
Could we fund, like you said, we could probably fund 5,000? You okay with that or not?
Well, 5 to 5 to 5, it just,
Well, that's what I'm saying, and then we can look at the situation, 3 or 4 months down the road and see if we can pull some more out of
well,
it.
that's why I wanted to have a deferral so we could.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maureen.
I would support deferring this if it meant that we could sort of give ourselves time to think about this between now and the next meeting. I'm worried that if we parcel out $5,000, it's not going to be enough. And I've made this point before, and I'm sorry to harp on it, but we all ran saying housing was really important. We have been able to, and in part this is spurred on by the province, we will be doing the housing needs assessment, but the only viable nonprofit organization in this community at this point is Birch. And they're asking for our help to move forward with that project. And I think that we would be subject to a lot of criticism if we talked about the importance of housing and did not provide some support to this nonprofit organization where they are basically working as flat out as they can to move some things forward on the housing front.
May I ask, and maybe this is a conversation to have with Birch, but their original request was for $25,000 from us. They received in the meantime $15,000 from the Community Foundation. So would they be comfortable with receiving a more, a 10,000, which would be, I think, more achievable for this year?
Yeah.
Like I said, if you go back to their original request, it was 25 altogether.
We could find that out in the interim.
If that would speed things, then I would support. I think the thrust, as Councillor Exeter said, is obvious. I can be supporting. I think your point is valid. If we could parcel this together, give Raj a chance to have a look at it, and then we can bring it forward in a clean, crisp way at our next meeting, and not keep them waiting, and see if we can move this forward to the tune of, which are probably a manageable sums of money, and give Birch what they're looking for and what we feel they should have, and as quickly as reasonably we can.
So do we need some sort of resolution?
Yeah.
We do.
I have one question, which is, and then I'll move the deferral. Do we have a contingency line in our budget?
Not a surmountable, we do have a small contingency, yes.
I can't remember how much the policy said it should be. Here we go. Budget contingency, 1.5% of operating expenses.
We've got approximately $42,000 in our contingency. When I started here, there was no contingency in the operating budget in past years. So this past year, that is basically the only contingency we have.
Oh, we'll dig stuff up then. Okay, so I would move that we defer the resolution that council directs staff to incorporate consideration of the additional item of 25,000 funding for the Vaughan Island Resilient Community Housing to the 2020 budget process to the next council meeting.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, that's done. Now we have to put a resolution on the table just to send this back to staff, I guess.
Yeah, I think if Hope just puts in the minutes the direction that we will reach out to Robin Fenton to find out if there's a flexibility with that budget amount, considering the $15,000 already received from the community.
I have to report back to the council, maybe at the next meeting if we could do that.
Yeah, no, we
It's
definitely
just
to the next meeting.
emergency there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, staff reports. Emma.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bringing for introduction a temporary use permit application, TUP 01-2019. This is for 1441 Adams Road. And I think most of council is familiar with this property, which has hosted the Classic Motor Show for the past 2 years. It is located on the west side of the island here at the intersection of Adams Road and Bowen Bay Road. And as mentioned, it's a Classic Motor Show that started in 2017. It was running on a temporary use permit that had a period of 1 year, and it was renewed one time, so used over the past 2 years. The event has not received any bylaw complaints over the past 2 years, and staff does not know of any issues arising from the event. The application is for assembly use on a portion of a residentially zoned property. As you can see here, the car display areas are within a creek buffer area, and environmental protection measures will be included as conditions of the permit. These measures are determined by a qualified environmental professional. The permit also includes restrictions on hours of use, parking, access, a number of times a year, one time a year. The applicant would also like to request an increase in the temporary use permit period from 1 year to 3 years, and this would mean that the event can be held once a year for the next 3 years until the permit expires. And the temporary use permit can be renewed up to 1 time for another 3-year period, which will come back to council for approval. So given the history of compliance with this applicant and the fact that we haven't received any bylaw incidents with the previous 2 events, staff does recommend that council move forward with public notice, given that council will consider this application at the July 8th meeting.
Allison?
I'm looking at the permit itself, page 2, points 2 and 3. I think it would be better if you said the applicant or property owner, because it's not a developer. It's not a development application, it's a property owner's application for change of use for temporary purpose. And on point 11, what is a Jersey barrier?
It's a concrete barrier.
Okay, so, having driven by there this evening, not on purpose, but accidentally, because we had to do something else on the way, the temporary access is not blocked off. And wasn't in the previous year either.
I talked with the...
It's obvious that he hasn't been using it because of the grass, but it is not blocked off.
Okay, I had asked our former superintendent of public works, and he did not have an issue with how it was.
Well, there's just a half inch partly across, so scooters and people and all that sort of stuff could easily get in here, and a small car.
Why is that an issue? Just because you have
It's just a process that we're asking somebody to do something that they're not doing.
We'll follow up with the applicant.
Either put it in or leave it out. You got rules, you follow them.
Right. Emma, on these temporary use permits, is it $250 a year? So the 3-year one, if they decide to go for a 3?
The temporary use permit application fee is, it was $750, and with the recent fee bylaw update, it's $850.
But that's
For
only
the-
once.
For 3 years.
For three?
For the application,
Yeah.
and it's regardless of the period of the permit, that's determined.
I mean, 1 year is the same as 4?
It's
The
processing
fee is the
the
same.
application.
The application
It's a
fee.
process fee.
Well, I can understand why he's going for 3 years.
Well, the first application did come to council for 3 years, but council felt it it would be safer to try 1 year first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the 3 years.
No, I mean, for the sake of this is a non-profit, I mean, the administrative thing, I mean, it's tried and proved. Many of us have attended this event, it's a very fine event. And I'd certainly support the efforts to make it 3 years.
But just to be clear, that they are not a not-for-profit. I mean, they funnel their funds through to the museum and archives, but they're not technically.
Yeah, technically.
Just wanted to make that clear.
I think are we discussing waiving fees at this meeting?
No, it's not part of this.
Okay, then I'd like to move the motion.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Any further discussion? Sorry, Emma? No?
Sorry, I don't know if this is the right time to bring it
Sure.
up. But the applicant did include a letter requesting that the fee be waived.
That's a different motion.
Okay, I didn't include
Yeah, it's
the
not part of the
recommendation.
motion, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe when it comes forward the next time or something, if it's
Well,
going to be a
I think
recommendation of
the
staff.
council will need to pass a resolution after this resolution indicating whether or not they're agreeable to waiving the fee.
But we don't have anything in front of us.
Yeah, we do, it's in here.
It's in the report.
But it's not in the agenda, so
It's on the package.
Yeah.
I think the notice, the motion to waive should be on the agenda where we consider it.
Staff haven't recommended that
I
we
mean,
waive
staff
it
are
or
quite,
haven't waived.
Can we deal with the motions on the table and then discuss
Okay,
the letter?
all in favor? Fine, unanimous. Now, if we go to the next part of it, which is,
It's not on the
it's
agenda.
not on the, it's not on.
I mean, if there's appetite from council to waive the fee, that's their right. But certainly from a staff perspective, we are not recommending that the fee be waived.
Totally agree with you.
I agree.
I agree.
So
Nobody's going to move it, so let's move on.
Yes.
The fee, we'll just record in the minutes that the fee will not be waived.
But can we
Sorry,
encourage
my
them,
cold tablets are making me longer than normal.
we could encourage the proponent to look at the community grants side of things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a good
This
point.
looks like a community grants kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but I think part of the problem
Or
with
the
community
museum.
grants is they have to be not-for-profit organizations.
But it's something joint with the museum, just encourage them to work together. 'Cause
It could also be done through other things like Knick-Knack Nut or the community foundation.
It's just if they were gonna come to the municipality, we have the whole community grant structure for things like this. And it just means that we need to be a little more organizational.
You know, I understand the principle on that and everything, but it does sort of set us up for the future.
Maureen.
Yes, Maureen.
Just want to confirm something. Sorry. Because this point came up in another context. Eligible applicants for community grants are nonprofit and/or charitable organizations or individuals acting on behalf of an unincorporated group.
Okay.
That's why I'm not in the finance department.
So it's
So it is available.
Yeah.
It's pretty broad.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, then we will.
I think
refer to
that would
next
be a classic for the community grant.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think council's just issued the temporary use permit for 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
But they can still come back. Anyway, that's
No, you
up to
can't come
them.
back after the fact.
but when he comes forward in another 3
He's got
years.
No, we can.
3 years to think about it.
Yeah.
We haven't issued it, we just gave notice, right? Isn't this just the community?
I'd put it in as grants.
We've done the community grant for this year,
No, we can do it for next year.
Yeah.
but he's not applying next year.
Oh. Okay, that's not.
Let's move on. Sorry, can it?
Thank you, Emma.
Thanks,
Thank you, Emma.
Awesome.
That was just giving
Notice.
notice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see what comes out of that.
Okay, Daniel, back to you.
Thank you. So I have for introduction a DVP application on 1281 Ocean View Road. So this is the lot in question. So included in the report are some of the images of the property. So this is the existing house on the property, and there's an existing one-story garage located immediately next to the house. So this is the view that looking from over the neighbors. So the neighbor is building a workshop at the front of the property, and you can see just tucked in the trees here where the garage is overlooking from the neighbor's property. Or this is the site plan. So the existing garage sits within the side yard setback on 1281 Ocean View, and the owner has applied to add a second story on the existing garage to build a detached secondary suite. So they're looking for that relaxation from the side yard setback. This is the proposed, so this is looking at the garage with the existing first floor with a second floor added for that suite. And this is looking from the neighbor's side, looking at the garage what's proposed is the detached secondary suites. They're proposing to make sure to eliminate the windows overlooking that side lot line, overlooking the neighbors. And this one is not very visible, but it's 5 feet, the existing wall is 5 feet from the side yard setback, so they're asking for the reduction of the side yard setback and reduction of the overhang to allow that second story to be built. So required side yard 3.0 meters, and in our existing setbacks, we would allow an overhang within 2.1 meters. They're requesting a side yard setback of 1.5 meters and an overhang within 0.45 meters of the side lot line. In the report, 2 or 3 letters of support that the applicant provided from the adjacent neighbors, so the neighbor on this immediate side as well as the far side of the property and overlooking sort of uphill of the property as well. So what staff recommending is that notice be given that council will be considering this DVP at the July 8th meeting and to authorize staff to give notice.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Allison?
Just clarification.
Yeah.
So the setback for a garage is different than the setback for a secondary suite? Because I thought you said it was within the garage was within the setbacks.
The garage is within the setback. The existing garage was built prior to adoption of our land use bylaw.
Oh.
At some point in the 70s it was built.
So that might, I missed that clarification if it was in the report, my apologies. And then can you go back, you talked about the windows.
Mm-hmm.
Are you actually suggesting they're gonna remove those little tiny windows that somebody's gonna have to stand on a chair to
No, no,
look
no.
out
So,
of?
so currently the garage has no windows on this back wall, and
Okay.
what they're proposing is when they build the second story, that, you know, the windows looking into the property would be quite glazed, right? But the wall overlooking the neighboring property
It's
has
tiny
minimal windows
windows.
applied, so it's
Yeah,
not
okay,
overlooking the
that's
neighbor's
what I
side. Yeah.
misunderstood what you're saying. No, just out of curiosity, just so that I can understand how long it takes to process these things. When was the application submitted?
I believe the end of March.
So the pictures weren't quite as old because there was snow on the ground in the pictures.
We have not had it since snow was on the ground.
Now, going back to notice.
Yeah.
Since our notice procedures, the written ones only require section 499, are you still putting a notice in the paper?
We will put a notice in the paper, we'll place a sign on the property, and we'll canvass council for a site visit before
So
eventually.
do we, since that's just established practice, not any requirement, do we not need to then put that in motion?
No, it's operational process.
So operational process, okay. So dispute that one.
The neighbors, obviously the next door neighbor that's gonna be mostly affected
Yeah.
is in favor. One of the letters was from that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll move the motion.
Yeah, I certainly don't have
Yeah,
a problem.
second.
Anybody else? Okay.
Do you want me to read the whole thing, or?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm teasing.
Okay. I'll move the motion as written.
Thank you.
Michael, you're second.
Well, that's correct, yeah.
Any further discussion? I can't see an issue with this at all. We get housing in some shape or description, and all neighbors are happy. Yeah. It's an existing building. Sorry? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Thank you. Raj, you're back on again.
The report you have here is council for information, and it's basically describing the importance and how staff will engage the Cove Bay Local Area Advisory Committee to make sure that they're engaged and providing feedback. The council, especially with the Cove Bay water treatment plant coming on board, their involvement and engagement in the process is extremely important to staff and to the community. So we've got a meeting planned with them next week, and we've set 2 meeting dates, follow up in September and December currently. And essentially, conclusion to the report is exactly what I said, that basically the engagement of the Cove Bay Water System Local Area Committee is crucial to the development of the water treatment plant.
Meeting June 18th, our engineer will be attending this.
Oh, that's
to
awesome.
discuss
Isn't
the
that great?
project.
Yeah, I think it's
You
very
mean our
important.
consulting engineer that you
Yes.
haven't quite hired
Yeah,
yet?
no, this is our, it used to be Open Statement Night, but it's WSP now.
Oh, thank you.
And
Because
it's
I was-
Walt Bayless, who's stick handling the.
Okay, so the original one.
Yes.
Great, thank you. I was unclear what,
Yeah.
I
there's
saw
so many consulting
WCS
engineers.
was the consulting engineer, and I'm going, I didn't think I saw that before.
No, it's all good.
I think as an overreaching policy, I mean, most of these, all these committees are volunteer, and I think it's really important that we communicate with them. It might not seem, in our world, it might not seem like it's important information, but to keep them in the loop, I think is really important, because they start to lose their enthusiasm very quickly if they're not involved.
I think we also need their input.
Absolutely.
We don't need to just be
100%.
informing them.
No.
We need their collaborative experience is what I think it's called
what I
in here,
did,
but
yeah.
basically, we need to consult the user communities.
Here,
And the more and the earlier, the better. It's good.
perfect.
So I will move the council receive for information the report from the Chief Financial Officer and Manager of Public Works regarding Cove Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee engagement dated June 4th, 2019.
Second.
Thank you, Dave. I'll take it from Rob, this one, and all in favor? Allison? Thank you. Unanimous. All right, reports of committees, Cal, and commissions. To you, Maureen.
Did we skip over the correspondence piece?
Sorry, did I
Well,
miss that?
yeah, could we move, what we were gonna move?
Oh, I'm sorry, that 12.1, yeah.
Yeah, the one from,
Okay.
Sorry, Maureen.
It's not under regular consent.
Okay, so item 12.1 is a letter from Pamela Goldsmith-Jones regarding the Union Steamship Company BC water lot expiry. And the problem that, as explained in the letter, the problem that the marina has run into is that they've got a federal and a provincial license mismatch. One runs to 2030, the other runs to 2022, and it has created an issue in terms of getting funding to support the building of the worker housing in the cove. So you might not have been prepared for this, so maybe I'll give you a few moments to just quickly look at the letter to see what's there.
I did look at it.
You did look at it? You all looked at it? Okay, so I asked Kathy if it would be appropriate for us to consider writing a letter from the municipality to Flynn Road in support of expediting the renewal of the license.
I would support that. I think it's extremely unfortunate that this bank financing is dependent upon this paperwork being tidied up. And I hate to see this project getting caught in the middle of this. Any support? I think Pamela Goldsmith-Jones' letter was excellent. It was short to the point, and I would advocate for supporting that to give the marina all the help we can so they can get on it. It's unfortunate to get caught up in this type of administrative snafu, and it's just time wasting and delaying. And if we can help the log jam, please, I ask that.
Yeah, I don't know, how long has this been going on and what happened? How did it
How is it suddenly an
transpire?
emergency?
No, it's an emergency because the existing provincial water lot license expires in 2022.
No.
And no financial institution will.
No, I
lend money
understand
on
that
the-
part.
on a long
Sure.
term.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that they've contacted Flynn Road to see if they can get the process done to get it, and Flynn Road is so backlogged that, I mean, all the ones we've been getting have been after the fact. When they.
Oh, so it's actually Flynn who dropped the ball here.
Well, no, Flynn Road hasn't dropped the ball, but Flynn Road is, they've
They've
got so many other licenses in the queue, they're processing them as they come due.
So when Maureen asked me this question yesterday,
Should get
I
over it.
mulled it over. And I feel that the litmus test is if the other marina came to us and asked for the same thing, we would offer that
Yeah.
sort of assistance. We're not providing them with any financial assistance to a business. All we're doing is supporting a local business and hopefully facilitating something to go through Flynn Road. So I'm very comfortable with a letter of this nature being sent from the municipality.
I'd like to speak in support of that idea. It's a good idea to send a letter, for the mayor to send a letter to the.
Actually, I've got.
Okay, you've got, okay, well then I'll
Yeah.
just speak in favor, because it's not only a local business, it's also local worker housing that's
Yeah.
under construction
Yes.
in an affordable housing crisis. And so we could highlight that as well.
Absolutely, that's a good point. And anything else anybody can think of that we might want to highlight in the letter, I think that's.
We have to be a little careful. I mean,
Yeah.
I
understand that.
like Pamela's letter, and
Yes.
it's high level and
Yeah.
just encouraging them. So it's a fine line.
Yeah, so how does this sound? The council directs staff to write to Minister Donaldson, Flynn Road, to support expediting the renewal of the water lot license for
With
US.
lease, water lot lease, isn't it?
Is it a
That's
lease or-
that's what Pam says in her letter.
Water lot lease for the USSC Marina to enable the completion of the worker housing float homes. I think it's important to get the housing element in there,
Yeah,
so that
absolutely.
Yeah.
Good
the
point.
sense of urgency comes
Yeah.
through. So I'll move that.
second.
Okay.
I assume staff will find out the license number and actually reference that in the letter.
We'll do that.
And we got to write the letter. I just want to make sure that it wasn't Union Steamships who dropped the ball on this.
No.
Because then we sort of look,
I think they found out about a month and a half ago that there was an issue with the lender.
But I know they went to the Flynn Road and asked if they could start the process now and get it done, and they were told no.
Oh,
Wait until your license comes up.
Oh,
Because it's not up until 2022, so Flint Row has no desire to.
oh, absolutely, yeah, no, that is a whole different situation, yeah. Yeah, certainly.
I just had a question, because we won't see the whole letter and we're basing it on Pamela Goldsmith-Jones. I didn't realize that the wooden dock was being replaced with aluminum.
I didn't realize that either.
So that would be something to check, because I
Yeah.
don't think we've heard that. I knew they were
Yeah.
wrapping up the old styrofoam, and I sort of thought they were recycling everything. That's probably why that building was set up.
But I think, Councillor Nicholson's resolution is very clear as well. We're talking about the affordable
Oh.
housing, but that is a sidebar that we will need to find out.
Well, if you're gonna use that part of
Yeah.
it, it just needs checking. Because
I think
it's
we
in
should write our own
Goldsmith
letter,
Jones.
not copycat of it.
Yeah.
Have more weight.
No,
right?
certainly not.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to, also if I was missing something. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
I'll ask a question, all in favor? Perfect, unanimous, that's well done. Thank you for
I
bringing that
have
up,
one
Warren.
follow-up. Would it be appropriate to ask staff to forward the letter to, or phone their people at the license, to just ask if they've received it? I mean, will the minister?
Oh, what we can do is we can copy Flynn Row on the letter.
Yeah, the staff that are processing
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Bowen Island related, because.
We'll get the contact information from Daniel, we'll make sure to send Flynn Row copy directly to those contacts.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Okay, back to our reports, and back to you, Maureen.
Yeah, so this is the material from the last meeting of the Heritage Commission, and we essentially dealt with the money part of this. But the recommendation was that council approve the Heritage Commission's work plan and budget, option A, dated May 1st, 2019, to enable progress on Island Plan 2019 strategic priority B3. 1.2, engage the community in the development of a heritage strategic plan with $7,000 allocated from 2019 strategic priorities funds for consulting fees and public engagement costs. So that's where we had left things at the end of our last meeting. And also included in the agenda is 3 pages or so of the work that we have done. And I wanted to tell a story with that account of the work that was being done. We did this, we did this, we did this. We put a work plan forward that had a budget that didn't get approved. We did this, we did this, we did this. Over the next year, we put a work plan forward with a budget that didn't get approved. So this was the 3rd iteration. And thank you for approving the funding. So I'm not sure what to do with the recommendation at this
I
point.
don't think we need to adopt this as it was adopted. We'll just put a note in the minutes to reference.
But shouldn't we receive the work plan?
Probably.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you've seen this work
Yeah.
plan
Mm-hmm.
3 times before.
Okay.
And the variations are, just tweaking dates here and there. The substance of it is the same.
It's the same, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay,
just went back and changed the months.
it's been recycled.
It's being recycled. It's a heritage
Recycled.
plan.
Recycled Okay, you're happy with that then?
I'm very happy with that, thank you. Yeah.
Mayor Manager. Okay, so we did have a meeting of the Mayor Standing Committee last week, and what we were talking about at that time was moving on, and since Birch and the Health Center are sort of on their way at the present time, we're off that, and we're just trying to figure out how we're going to allocate the workload going forward. One of the things we did want to talk about is sort of clearing up a few items, and that's what you'll see in these recommendations is, the first one there is that council authorizes staff to engage consultants to conduct a feasibility study regarding the expansion of water and sewer servicing of the community lands. If we're in a position where some of the community lands probably won't be serviced by sewer and water, but the ones that are going to be serviced, we have to sort of see which ones we are going to service, what the intent is there, and how we're going to service them. So that was the notion here, Kathy was.
I think the committee found it difficult to make recommendations to council about the community lands without first knowing what our playing field is, and if it's possible to expand, our sandbox, to expand sewer and water. And this is something we need anyways, completely, to have a full understanding about utilizing or disposing of community lands.
And it also, as far as selling community lands and that sort of thing, it's quite a difference in the cost base of land service or not service. So if the intent is to service it, then that's the way it's gonna be portrayed. Small.
I was wondering, does this mean all community lands? And the second thing is, whatever happened to the Snug Cove plan? Because years ago, the community went through many iterations. I know some of it was captured in the last update of the official community plan. But we still, I'm pretty sure there was one that was passed, Kathy's smiling.
Oh, no, I just remember the Snug Cove plan well.
Yeah, but it got a lot of community consultation happening, and there was a lot of discussion, a lot of good input, a lot of detailed thinking. But now we never seem to refer to it anymore. Have we rescinded it, or what is where can I find it?
Is this a Hudson Becker?
That's what I'm thinking of. Is that what?
The Snug Cove
No.
plan during the OCP, I think we passed a motion to continue to use the Snug Cove, no, the Hudson Backer was not the Snug Cove plan. The Snug Cove plan was a separate schedule, it was attached to the OCP. And when the OCP update was done in 2010, several sections of it got actually put into the OCP body. The rest of it didn't, and we passed a resolution, as I recall, to continue to use it as a guiding document.
Did we not adopt it as a separate bylaw?
We
I thought we did.
No, well, I'm not sure if we adopted it as a separate bylaw or as a policy.
I
But we
wonder
have to research that.
I'm pretty certain it's in the binder
It
that
is.
we have
Yeah.
for the community lands workshop, so do we have a copy?
Yeah, I know, well, I know, I've got files going back too, but I was just wondering why we don't refer to it anymore. If we adopted it as a bylaw, is it because it doesn't include the community lands, or?
No.
It seems to
No.
me it's sort of like a master plan for how, not only what the eventual Snug Cove should look like, but contains details about setbacks and things like that, as well as process-related stuff, I thought. But I don't know. Daniel, do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure what that has to do with
No,
servicing.
it doesn't, I agree with Allison, it's like I remember, it is in the binder, and I remember looking at it, but it's very old. But it's beside the point for right now. It's not, this is about servicing, understanding whether or not it's appropriate, we look at or not look at servicing.
And it doesn't entail,
Yeah.
if you look at the map, it doesn't entail,
Like it goes.
lot 3 is pretty much taken care of, except maybe these areas down here have to be looked at. Lot 2 will probably come into this area, but it's mostly like the old library lot here and this part of lot 1. I don't think we're probably gonna service that or this property at this point in time. But that's why we wanna have.
Okay, so I think this resolution is premature for 2 reasons. There have been several reports written on the subject, and I think the committee should dig those out first. And one of them was done by Urban Systems. 2, you need to just have a look at the reports. And 3,
So who's gonna pull that together though, Allison? The idea
oh,
is,
the reports are all there.
I know, but we don't have
They're
the
also
expertise
old.
in-house to do this.
I'm saying it's premature. We dig out the reports, and then the new person could just look at them and say, you need to do this, we're getting somebody to help us with engineering. And B, where is the money going to come from? Which isn't covered in this resolution, so I cannot support it. And I assume we're severing these into 3, yeah, they are 3 resolutions. So I think it's premature at this point, for 2 reasons. Find all the studies that have been done and figure out what needs to be done, if it hasn't already been done. There was a big study done on sewer and water connections for that little area of lot 1.
I think.
And I can take them all out for you.
I think part of the feasibility, study also had to do with updated costs of bringing those services, and those old reports, while they might provide some background and strategy and so forth, they're not going to give us costs, and they may not reflect new technologies that could be possible there.
But the whole issue is they're greenfields. Who's gonna pay? Traditionally, we have had the developer pay for their service.
And they might end up paying for it.
No, but how much work are you gonna do for the developer? I'm sorry, I'm voting against this resolution for two reasons. We need to dig out and look at. And those studies that were done were probably, I think, were pretty specific in a lot of cases, and it may just be a matter of updating numbers. So don't start the wheel all over again.
I don't think that was the plan, was to build on past reports, pull it
Well,
together
that's
with
not
current
what this
information.
resolution says, so I'm
Well,
voting
then
against it.
Well, let's
And I
revise
wanna
the
know where the
resolution.
money's gonna
Yeah,
come from
change
to
the
pay for
resolution.
it.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Then I agree with that.
Yeah.
Rob?
I just want, because I've lived the various standing committee meetings, and I have brought this up in the past, and one of my concerns on moving ahead, and the last thing I want to do is get a new report out and then not use it for 10 years, and then all the numbers are out of date, and have enough of those reports going around. I've commented about this in the past, that I think it's very important that we work on lot 3, we get it right, we do it, we see where things roll out before we start expanding into the other lots. So one of my concerns is that we start doing a lot of work right now on other areas surrounding that without having completed lot 3 and seeing what the housing uptake is going to be and whatnot there. So it's just a concern. I don't know if you can comment on that, or somebody from the committee can comment on how we're looking at proceeding ahead. Is this a, hey, let's get stuff on lot 2 and let's get stuff on lot 1 and a quarter lot? Or is this, let's just get a bit of a better grasp? Or is there, I guess I'd like some reassurance that we're going to really focus on lot 3 and do it well and see what, and after it's developed, see where we then need to move into, besides getting into all these other lots right now without seeing what happens to lot 3 at the end of the day.
Well, David, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. A couple of points. First of all, should we look at all the past studies, and then we had some discussion about this at the meetings, all the past studies say, save lot 3 for later on because it's basically the core of your community. Allison, let me finish, okay? Because it's the core of your community and see how other things go. There was some discussion about that at the meeting and there was not agreement, but the point of this was not to say, oh, let's start building houses over there and over there and over there. It's let's understand what the ground is so that when opportunities do come by, let's say somebody comes to us and says, well, we're interested in doing something in lot 1 up in the top corner there, which is probably the best spot that I built there. We've got some sense of whether this can be serviced or whether it should stay as septic or not, so that we can understand what kind of costs we would put to the developer and what kind of costs we would, what kind of price we would demand for that kind of land. So it's just to get a sense of what's there, what could be serviced, what shouldn't be serviced, so we have a better and as Maureen said, understanding what current prices are, current technologies are, so we have a better sense of what these lands are. It's all about looking forward rather than waiting until the last minute when there's something there and you say, my God, we don't even know what this is.
Part of the mandate of the Mayor Standing Committee is to assess these different properties, and that's a big part of the assessment of that property is whether it can be serviced or not. Hey, somebody might come in and say, well, it can't be serviced. Or it can only be serviced for an unreasonable price, and then it's not going to.
Gary, I support what you're saying. Just one question, because I also believe that if they're conducting a feasibility, they are going to look at the old reports as well. So let's assume that these intelligent people are going to do that. Now, just on the matter, do we know what was the discussion around the cost? It's not going to come for free. What was the arrangement? What was your understanding, or what are you looking for there in terms of how much is this going to cost?
Well, as staff, what we were grappling with is, do we put this out as a request for proposal, expressions of interest, to get an idea of what's out there? I think it is building upon all the past work that's been done. And as David indicated, we need to have that foundation before any
Yeah.
decisions. So we're ready. It doesn't mean we're gonna go ahead and develop any of these lands or dispose of any of these lands.
So
We're just sort of.
it's kind of a pretty high level overview of the situation is what we're looking at. We're not certainly not putting shovels in the ground or anything.
And we can get, I mean, now that we're engaging
Yes.
interim director of engineering services, we can get a good idea of costs for something like this from them. It'd be an easy thing to do.
I would certainly
Get a ballpark.
I would certainly like to support this so we can move on, quite honestly, and because I think it's part of the headlights, and if you don't have it, you don't know where you're going. So just as just to cover the ground, because this is the stuff that we should know. And if anyone comes to us and we don't, I think we look, frankly, a little foolish. So I just would like to see this as a sensible way we can proceed with this and support
I just
it.
realized, sorry, the wording is off here. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it shouldn't be that council authorized staff to engage a consultant to conduct a feasibility.
That's what I imagine.
Yeah,
Engage.
that wasn't the intention. The intention was that council authorized staff to.
Consider?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Right,
engage.
To issue.
It was explore the
Yeah.
feasibility, or something
Yeah.
like that is what we had,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would suggest that council authorized staff to explore the hiring of a consultant to undertake a feasibility. So right now, it's just asking council to explore what kind of costs are involved.
Yeah.
We're not going out without council approval.
No, certainly.
And I have still an outstanding question then, because
Yeah.
you're about all or some of the community lands, because David has said all, as I understand, and you've said some, like maybe.
Well, a lot of
maybe
them are
up to-
already serviced, so we don't have to, it's not an issue.
What you did is you said, well, maybe up to about here, so I'm just wondering if you can,
The
would
intention
it
of the
be,
committee is for all of the community
All of the
lands, so we
community
know our
lands.
sandbox.
Yeah.
okay,
As-
thank you.
As well as the old library.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think of that as part of the community.
Yes,
lands,
thank
actually.
you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Could you please repeat that motion?
Would you like me to?
Yes.
Yeah.
The council authorized staff to explore the hiring of a consultant to conduct a feasibility study regarding expansion of water and sewer servicing of the community.
Okay,
I would like
so
to, oh, sorry.
carrying on with that. Regarding expansion of water and sewer, expansion means expanding the existing system. The motion, if you want to explore, is how water and sewer would be provided on the community land.
Including the library law. or
Well,
the
the
old
library law
Can
is
we add that
community
in?
land.
Well, yeah, but some people don't think it is, so I think it would be nice to make that clear. Especially if we're gonna start including it in the community lands discussions going forward, because we have it up till now. And I think that's a good idea, so I'd just like to add that at the end of the motion, if I can do that as a, because I don't know if it's been moved yet.
I don't think it has, but I just,
No, because I don't like what's.
Okay, Maureen first.
Just to address Allison's concern, if we simply take out expansion of, so it reads just regarding water and sewer servicing of the community
Yeah.
lands, including the old library lot.
yeah, good. That's what I was gonna say too.
There we go.
Thank you.
And that doesn't involve
Money.
money at this point.
No, correct.
So I think it's a workable
Yeah.
recommendation.
We have some brains we can pick.
Yeah.
So does that mean you're going to explore how much it's going to cost to do this and then come back for approval to do it?
Perhaps.
Or does, because the other thing is, and I just had a report that went right through my head and it's gone right out again. There's a report on the information package on the provincial government's website called Development Financing. And the big thing is, yes, the land is capable of having sewer, and yes, it's, the only way you can tell if it's capable of having wells is to drill test wells. The only way you can tell if it's capable of having septic is to drill a septic pit. So who's going to pay for that cost? And then the other issue is if you're going to expand the water system or the sewer system and the sewer lines, who pays for that expansion? Do you put in a DCC so the new property owners purchase? So that report has already been written on how, both the document and an urban systems report. So I'm still not going to go on.
Okay. So,
I'll move the motion if
Okay.
nobody's moved it yet.
second, David. Further discussion?
I'd like to hear it one more time.
Certainly. The council authorized staff to explore the hiring of a consultant to conduct a feasibility study regarding water and sewer servicing on the community lands, including the old library lot.
And report back to council.
And report back to council, please. Yeah, okay. I move that.
I second.
You took out
Okay, we did that.
Yes, we did.
We did. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask a question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, and Allison, opposed. Thank you. Okay, so the next recommendation is council direct staff to investigate the legal status of the title of the federally owned property in the current RCMP station site on Miller Road. We have to, it was felt at the committee level that we have to understand these different parts of Lot 3 and what the situation is going to be with them. So we are going to engage the RCMP probably at a local level first, and then move up to Surrey, and then maybe even get done.
No, I think, and this was Tom Swan, who has the experience, was indicating that some, if I have this right, some federal lands are part of a register, and some aren't. The ones that are part of a register are difficult to dispose of. Ones that are federally owned but not part of the federal register, I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, is easier to dispose of. So it's just clarity, finding out clarity as to if it's on this register or not.
Yeah, I need to.
You need to find the relative status that federal
Yeah,
adjoining property has in the code.
Why are we doing this?
We want to see if there's any possibility of taking over that piece of property or swapping them with something else or whatever.
Because
It's an integral part of the code.
It's part of,
Well, I
think
know
it's part
that,
of planning, it's not
but the
code.
whole issue is, if it's not in the register and they can sell it, then there's a whole policy for disposition of federal lands.
This is just it's finding as much information as we can to make informed
And,
decisions.
and if you want to talk about what the process is when we get to hit 5,000 people, then I would suggest you talk to the CEO of Gibson's, because they're in the process of researching all that and finding out, because they're going to hit 5,000 in the next census.
I'm not sure what this has to do with the registry or not.
Well, all I'm saying is they'll sell it for fair market value.
Well, we'll find out.
So I think you're speaking in support then, that's exactly what we should do.
Well, I was wondering what legal status meant,
Yeah.
so now that I have.
Well, we're talking about the registry, because the registry is pretty hard to move on once it's registered. I don't think we'll ever get there, but.
I imagine.
This in some ways dovetails with the first one, you know,
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
just
get things around. I will happily move it, yes, and that way we'll get some information on this area, one way or another.
Yeah, here. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Further discussion? Sorry about that. Okay, that one was, sorry, was that unanimous?
It was.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is the same sort of thing, the Ben Dowling property, the gas station property, just to investigate any future development initiatives that they might be interested in there. Thank you. Second. Yeah, all in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Well done. Well done, right. New business. David Hawking.
There wasn't I haven't had a meeting, but I thought there was a couple of things in the, I just got to flip back to the information items that were interesting. There's, 12.4 Metro Vancouver, this is 3 Metro Vancouver things, but quite interesting is the transit-oriented affordable housing study. And this is a phase 2 of that, and it's building on the phase 1 work, which pointed out that for people who are, that housing is obviously a huge problem for people in the entire region, but the transportation is extremely expensive as well. And so if you can have homes that are located near transit situations, you actually have an opportunity to reduce costs. So this is sort of taking that further and looking at some policy options. And one of the policy options is for municipalities to use surplus lands for this kind of housing. So it just suggests that the work we're doing on the community lands is exactly what we should be doing. It also talks about, I mean, the work, we're also initiating some work right now with the APC on conservation development, which is sort of looking at the same principle, finding lands, clustering housing around around main roads and transit routes.
Yeah.
So trying to find some more affordable housing linked to transportation. I was also at a conference last week, the Renewable Cities Conference, and one of the really interesting graphs, or actually a map that was shown, they looked at the GHG emissions per person in the Toronto area, and basically it relates most directly to how far you live from your job.
Of course,
Yeah.
And it was really quite amazing to see this graph, not this graph, I'm sorry, this map of Toronto, the Toronto region, and you just saw the colors showing high emissions getting higher and higher the further you got from downtown Toronto. So, pointing to the same thing around the importance of transportation.
I had a question.
Okay.
Did you do your composting field trip?
Yes, I've done 2. So I could talk more about that. I had really interesting one, went to the airport today, and where they've got actually a magic box.
Magic box, that's what we need.
Yes.
Just put it in.
To cover the money too.
Yeah,
So
we
I
have to
think-
pay extra for the one.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I've got another phone meeting on Friday or Thursday, I forget. So anyway,
Thank you, Dave.
I'll do more work and tell you more.
Are you inspired?
Yeah, I thought,
Optimistic?
actually quite optimistic. When I'm looking, Raj's data on our costs, per ton, the way I could maybe check the way I'm doing my math, but our costs per ton of compost are very high. And so I think there's some real opportunity to slide under those costs, being able to do that on. Well, the tricky part, I mean, this one doesn't take a lot of space, although whereas other approaches like the GORE system are sort of simpler, but you need more space.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll be able to tell you more about that after I've done a bit more work.
I look forward to your report.
Thank you, yeah, that's great.
Carla's also been working on it as well, and she went to see his outfit in Abbotsford last week.
Oh, good.
A GORE system.
Okay, trustees Fast and Kale, Islands Trust.
I'm going to wait till I come back from our meeting.
Okay, I'll just report that the part 2 of the Bowen tax levy analysis is in the Trust Council agenda that's posted now for a meeting next week. So you can look at that, starts on page 215. And it compares Bowen's levy to other island local trust committees, and it doesn't appear that the municipal levy calculation is generating any inequities for BIM. So there's still one more part to come, but we'll be discussing it at Trust Council. And that report is there. If you want a link specifically, let me know, but otherwise you can find it easily at the Islands Trust
Send it
website.
around to everybody.
Yes.
Okay, I will do.
I did.
And then Trust Council's next week on Galliano. So Michael and I are going to be using public transit and ferries and carpooling to get there. And then also other Islands Trust things regarding recent resolutions are items 12.3, A, B, C, and D in our report. That's all I want to say.
Quick questions. Any word on including in the strategic plan the provision, looking at electric ferries and talking about these?
I will bring it up.
Okay.
I think all we can do is bring it up as 2 of 26 trustees, because we've got a whole strategic planning session again in the upcoming Trust Council
I
meeting.
think electrification, generally speaking, we can raise as a bit of a subject, but it will be across the board. I don't think it would be just for us.
No, across.
It will be an across the board.
It's like our Bowen municipality, Island Municipality Strategic Plan. This is one for the term of Islands Trust, but it doesn't mean we can't revisit it either. The point is, we'll be bringing it up as your local trustees, right?
Yeah, and see how practical it is and how it works, and get input from the others as well. And it has been on their discussions.
Yeah, I'm just curious with the Island Trust, because we put forward a letter to them, a link to them, do they come back to us and say just, hey, we received it, or do they come back and say, yes, we're going to be doing this, or no, we're going to be doing this, or how do they inform us moving forward?
That's a good question.
Yeah, okay.
And I haven't figured out all the intricacies about what committee refers to which staff, or staff refer to. It's probably going to be in our Trust Council. It's probably in that Trust Council agenda. I haven't got into the correspondence section. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'll remind your CA of the resolution we have, just so,
That would be
I
good.
think you also spoke to.
Yeah.
So we'll just flag it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, back to you, Maureen, on the Metro Parks.
Nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Allison, Friends of Mayors.
No, haven't had any meetings,
All right. So that will bring us down, because we didn't have any of the, we didn't have anything out of the consent agenda. That'll bring us down to question period.
I'm just watching the game score.
Oh, all right. Okay, what is it?
103 to 97 until like 3 minutes ago. It
For who?
was for the
Yeah.
Raptors.
Woo!
And until 5 minutes ago, it was, or 3 minutes ago, it was 95, wait, 93, 95 for the Warriors.
kidding.
This is 10.
How much time left?
3 minutes.
Oh, that is so exciting.
Anyway, I do have questions though. Fun story. So has Blue Water run out at all? Has there been a run dry?
No.
No, okay. Because I had heard otherwise.
Yeah.
Thank you. And will, I don't know, we might need to talk more about Bob's departure, delay like the Cove Bay or other projects?
No, actually Bob will continue working with us as a contractor on the Cove Bay water treatment plant. But we're hiring interim director of engineering support to provide that support to the organization until we advertise and hire. So what we'll be doing is restructuring at this time to hire a director of engineering, and then operational public works will be under Kevin Hicks.
And then, Sue Ellen, you mentioned lobbying?
Yeah, nothing new, it's just that the threat hasn't gone away.
Oh, okay.
And we still need to keep alert and using every opportunity to remind the powers that be about our fragile and isolated situation. And now you want to go watch that game.
I think it'll be over, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to convince Bob to have a going away party, but it might have to be a surprise. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah. All right, move to adjourn. Thank you, David. Okay, we are adjourned. We've got a closed meeting to